Hello, it's the Friday Talkie. Some of you may have read a piece of news or heard a piece of news. An American company called Writers Group Film Corporation have bought the rights to 300 plus Amiga games from Amiga Games Incorporated. A lot of people are excited about this because this company have a habit of buying up properties and rights to games and stuff and putting them on like Android and iOS and blah blah, making them all available, phones, pads, you name it. And the idea of all these Amiga games on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever, great. I think the whole story is not being told here. Lots of people will be getting very excited thinking of all their favourite Amiga games. But most, if not all, games on the Amiga were third-party developed. I don't know what this company have bought. There is a company out there that is selling Amiga games on mobile devices already. And that company is called Amiga Incorporated. They bought a whole load of rights. I don't know. I don't know the exact story there. Like, who did they buy them from? Did they go to all the third-party developers and buy the rights? Or is this abandonware? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that that is Amiga Incorporated and not Amiga Games Incorporated. So what have this Writers Group Film Corporation bought? What have they got the rights to? I don't know. But it's all very interesting. I can see them maybe trying to sell some games and getting themselves into trouble because they think they bought the rights to them and they actually haven't. That could be interesting. I know one thing. I've been putting up Amiga related videos for the past 3 days, as you may have noticed, with the whole CD32 thing. And hey, guess what? YouTube won't put any ads on them. Could this be related to this story? Are they worrying, or could be copyright issues there, regardless that one of the videos had no gameplay footage on it whatsoever? I don't know, maybe YouTube are just being screwy. I mean, they've never done that before, have they? Yeah, so things on the Amiga gaming front could potentially get quite interesting, if not for the reasons people are expecting. I would say watch this space, but yeah, it'll be on the interwebs before I know about it. Okay. That's that. My mouse is being a complete twat. Because it's wireless and the batteries are going. Alright. Now, there are 2 videos that I watched recently that kind of got my interest, and it's all, everything that I've watched and have been doing and am thinking at the moment is connected. One of these is Reality Check. Are you a console fanboy? This is on GameSpot. I just happened to stumble across this. I don't normally watch them, but it was a related video to another one that I watched, which I will mention in a little bit. So, are you a console fanboy? A scientific study has been done into the phenomena of fanboyism. People who will defend their chosen product, manufacturer, whatever, to the point of being completely irrational, you know, denying reality and the facts, reinventing history, all kinds of nonsense, and attacking what they see as opposing companies' ideas, products. That's fanboyism. It's irrational. A study has been done into this. Was that grammatically correct? I don't think it was. A study has been done on this phenomena. And the conclusions they came to was that fanboyism is a product of low self-esteem. That people who favour a particular product, who have brand loyalty for a particular product or company, who have low self-esteem, when that product is criticised, they take this as a personal attack. They seem to identify with that product or company, and so an attack on that is taken as an attack on them. I'm not going to go into the scientific reasons for this because I don't know what they are, but I found it interesting. And the question was asked, are you a fanboy? Are you a console fanboy? And I sat and I seriously asked myself the question. Because, don't know what that noise is, PlayStation. I am quite pro PlayStation. I am definitely anti X-Bone and Xbox 360, though I have an original Xbox. I'm quite anti-Nintendo, though two of my favourite gaming devices are the Virtual Boy and the GBA SP. So, do I consider myself a fanboy? I suppose the trouble is, if you ask any fanboy, or you say to any fanboy, hey, you're a fanboy, they'll say, no, I'm bloody not, and they'll get all defensive about it and go ahead behaving like a fanboy. Me, I don't actually think I am in terms of Sony. I have an amount of brand loyalty, not to Sony, despite the fact that I'm talking to a Sony camera at the moment, and I've got a PlayStation 3 and a couple of 2s and a 1 and a couple of 1s in fact. But the thing is, that's not about the brand. It's not, I love Sony, it's, I like the games on these things. Gran Turismo, basically. All the other stuff has been kind of superfluous. It's all about Gran Turismo for me. So I have the 1, the 2 and the 3. But it's all because that's what Gran Turismo is on. And in terms of corporate attitude, I find them fairly... I don't notice them. I don't notice that they do things in a way that I like, or rather they don't do things that piss me off, like force stupid policies, DRM bullshit on me, or strange weird controllers that I don't like. Every Sony has done things the way I would like them to be done, where Microsoft, I have disliked Microsoft for a very long time. The whole well, since the browser wars, the way they tried to crush Netscape, and pretty well did it, with their Internet Explorer. And I mean, they got taken to court and they lost and all kinds of stuff for their antitrust activities, and they've been getting in trouble for that kind of thing for a long time, and I dislike it. They are big corporate bully boys, and they're still behaving that way, trying to force consumers to do things the way they want them done. Windows 8? Who likes the look of that then, eh? Get everyone used to using a start button and then take it away because we've got this stupid big new design that might work on a mobile phone but on a desktop? No, I dislike them, so that doesn't make me a Sony fanboy, that makes me an anti-fanboy in terms of Microsoft. Nintendo, they certainly were bully boys back in the day with the NES. Their business practices were not great. But I don't have the great dislike for them that I have for Microsoft. They're kind of the underdogs at the moment, and I feel a little bit sorry for them because they're not doing very well. They're probably not doing very well because a lot of their business choices and such like have been pretty stupid. But where I find Nintendo's misfortune funny, I find Microsoft's despicable. Yeah, so does that make me a Sony fanboy? I think I'm just being practical. They have the games that I like, and they aren't doing things that piss me off. They did actually piss me off, and they did. I mean, PS3, of all of their products, the PS3 has pissed me off the most. I dislike the fact that they took away the option of running Linux, even though I never used it and probably wouldn't have. I liked knowing I could have it, and then bam, they took that away. Didn't like that. I dislike the massive updates and the constant update after update after update. Don't like that. That pisses me off. So it is very far from perfect, but it's still the best of a bad bunch. However, while I would say I'm not a Sony or PlayStation fanboy, though I would say they are my favourite product, back in the 16/32-bit era, it wasn't a console war, it was the computer wars. Atari, PC, Amiga. Oh hell yes, I was a fanboy. I was the most raging Amiga fanboy imaginable. I would say to this day, because it was a better product. It was always better than the Atari. In my opinion, I believe it was always better than the ST. I don't know about the Falcon. That kind of just never used one, never seen one, so it I don't really need to look into that. It was such a financial non-event that it just is irrelevant. PC, well, when the Amiga 500 came out, well, the 1000, then the 500, the Amiga kicked the arse out of PCs. They were better graphically, they were better sound-wise, they played better games, they did everything better, and they were cheaper. By the time of the Amiga 1200, I mean, the PCs caught up and overtook them. The 1200 was, it hadn't even caught up. It was effectively like a 286 at the time that you were buying 386s on the market or something like that. And I mean, they were even they were still selling the 1200 as their like premium. Well, no, I mean there was the 4000, but PCs kicked the arse out of it. By the time of the 1200 and the 4000, PCs were stomping all over them in terms of capability, and it was a damn shame, but I still stuck with the Amiga. Even though in terms of processing power, graphical power, it was inferior, I stuck with the Amiga for one big reason. I loved the operating system. I still, to this day, loathe having to use Windows. Granted, Windows XP I found to be very functional, and I've currently got Windows 7, and I find it to be, it does the job without crashing every 5 minutes. I mean, God. I did not go over to the other side until 2001. I bought my first PC in 2001. By that time the Amiga was like dead and buried almost. You know, there was a company, Amiga Incorporated, was still kind of struggling on, I think, trying to say, yes, we're going to do this. I mean, there was talk of the Amiga 1. I remember, what was that? The Walker. God, whatever happened to that? PowerPC based Amigas, that people were talking about it, things were being released in some small way that you just couldn't find, and they were ridiculously expensive, and basically the Amiga was dead. But I continued to use mine. I used that beast there. That was my Amiga. And I did everything with it. I did my gaming with it. I did the internet with it. Dial-up. IRC, web browsing, email, I mean POP3 email, and all kinds of stuff, news groups, FTP. I did loads of stuff, built my first website, several websites with it, and it was alright for a while, but then the interweb started to develop and do new things. There were webcams, there was audio chat, video conferencing, there was Java became a big deal, and well, JavaScript was everywhere, and the browser I had on that couldn't do any of that. It was just so utterly limited. At which point I decided, I want Java, I want all these bells and whistles, I want Flash, I want JavaScript. My browser on there, I was using Voyager, sort of, I don't know what version. It didn't have JavaScript. I had a demo version of AWeb that could do JavaScript, but it was a demo, so it would shut down every half an hour or something, I don't know. So I bought a second-hand PC in 2001 and it ran Windows 98. God! I found it, I understood how it worked. Switching over from Amiga OS Workbench to Windows was not a difficult thing. I understood all the concepts and everything, all of that was familiar. But never mind that digging around under the surface made no sense at all. It was so completely crash happy. I mean, it would crash every half an hour, and I came to consider that normal. Now, God, if this thing crashed every half an hour, it'd be out the window. So, you know, Windows has come a long way. But to this day, I miss the way the operating system worked on the Amiga. I understand, and I'm not talking about the graphic user interface. I'm not talking about this button to close, this to minimize, blah, blah, and stuff like that. I'm talking about the way the operating system itself worked. Like, what was in the folders. You had your devs, you had your libs, you had your C, you had your S. You didn't ever have anything in T. You had your storage and your drivers and all this stuff. And I knew what went where, and I could install software manually if I had to. I could manually edit my startup sequence and use a startup sequence, and I knew what the lines of code meant. And it was fantastic. I could just make it do stuff that I wanted it to do. There was this fantastic program on it called Snoop DOS. And I would run that, I would have that running just about all the time. Because if you were running a program and all of a sudden your computer crashed, Snoop DOS was recording everything that your computer did right up to the point that it crashed. So you would reboot the thing, go to your Snoop DOS, and it would tell you why it crashed. You know, it was like it was looking for a particular file that wasn't there, and because it wasn't there, it crashed. This happened a lot. It was, for all that I say, it was a wonderful operating system. If things weren't done automatically, properly, or you'd done it manually and bodged it, sometimes it was looking for files in places where they didn't exist. Maybe they'd been put in the wrong place, or whatever. Wrong version, something like that. Things like this happen. Snoop DOS would tell you, and I would then go and find the file that it was looking for and put it in the right place, and it would work, and I loved it. If such a thing exists on Windows, I don't have it, and if it does exist, it probably costs a bloody fortune, because there was the other thing with the Amiga, everything was cheap. I used a word processing package called Wordworth. I don't remember what it cost me, but I don't think it was more than about £20, and it worked. It did everything I wanted it to do. I could pick my font, I could pick the size it was going to be, I could set my layout how I wanted it, and it stayed that way. I try and use Word, Jesus Christ, apart from being insanely expensive, Word does not do what you tell it. Yeah, it changes the fonts for you here, there and everywhere. It fucks up your layouts all over the place. It does not do what you tell it, and it's demented. And that's how Microsoft products are. And I hate them. I just, yeah, pisses me off. So, definitely an Amiga fanboy back in the day. Absolutely. It did what I wanted it to do in a way that I liked and I considered superior to the competition. And even when the hardware was inferior, I stuck with it because I loved it. It worked in a way that to me made sense. Where even now, what are we, how many years on? 13 years later, they can't make a bloody word processor that works on this black box. Yeah, so fanboy modern consoles? No. Fanboy of old 16-bit era computer? Absolutely. Was that a self-esteem thing? Well, maybe that's a factor, because I have a vastly higher self-esteem now than I had back then. So, you know, if someone slagged it off, I probably did take it quite personally as well. Which, you know, from a scientific point of view, from a personal point of view, I find quite interesting. But from an entirely practical point of view, I thought they were great computers. Now, this brings me on to my third topic of what is basically an entirely Amiga-based talkie, really. Lawn Boys Post 1975. Don't think I've ever mentioned him before. When the games consoles you grew up with got cancelled, how did you feel? Actually, I didn't. I grew up with Atari 2600, and when it was cancelled, I didn't give a crap, because by then it was so massively out of date. Oh God, the Mega Drive. Had the Mega Drive arrived and the Atari was still going? I think they cancelled it in, was it 90 or 92 or something like that. Anyway, so when they cancelled that, I didn't care. I'd been using other stuff for a long time. But when the Amiga was cancelled, my God. Commodore went bust while I was using the 1200. And I was so aggravated by what Commodore were doing and their management. I mean, I read the magazines. The magazines were infuriated. They were looking into the business practices and just what mismanagement, mishandling of the whole product and product development and everything. And even Commodore's own development staff was so utterly frustrated. The people at the top, the money men, the senior management just did not give a crap about the product. They were all about churn them out, keep them going, don't worry about developing new product, just keep churning them out and we'll keep taking the money, thank you very much. And then investing in PCs and like building up a massive stock of parts that they'd bought and then found they were devalued and they couldn't sell the things at a profit, and they were losing money hand over fist and going broke, and just idiocy, pure stupidity. And I watched all of this happening in the press, and obviously they went broke. Commodore UK was still profitable, but then I suppose they didn't have the production costs and manufacturing costs, I guess, so they were purely sales based, and they were selling and they were making a profit. But you know, Commodore International, and God knows their structure was complicated, and it took a long time for it all to be sorted out after they were liquidated. They went bust, and Commodore, the Amiga was bought by Gateway 2000, and they sold 1200s for a little bit and then promptly went bust. And I was gutted all over again. And the Amiga was then bought by Amiga Incorporated. I can't remember who or what Amiga Incorporated was initially. But anyway, there they were, and they sold the 1200 for a little while. And then they went bust. or stopped selling. Anyway, I mean, there is an Amiga Incorporated now selling the software, as mentioned earlier. I don't think this has anything to do with the Amiga Incorporated that existed back then. Is it? Did it? I don't know. Dell. Did Dell ever have a hand in it? They were going to buy them. Can't remember. But I remember having my 1200 and reading the magazines and thinking, I want a 4040. I want a 4000 tower. I was saving up to buy one. I nearly had enough money to buy one, and then Commodore went broke, and I was gutted, and I just knew the dream I had of having a super uber powerful Amiga was just like out the window. Yeah, I managed to upgrade my 1200 quite nicely, with the 060 board and the tower case and the Zorro bus board and blah blah, and that was nice, but it was like, because they weren't being manufactured and developed as a serious product because of the mismanagement. I was gutted. I felt so betrayed. I'd invested so much time and money and had kind of an emotional attachment to it that when they discontinued it, yeah, I was really gutted. It was like losing a, well, I won't say a member of the family, but maybe a cherished pet, something like that. I felt very, very let down. And to this day, I think it's a bloody tragedy. It was a fantastic system, and if it had been developed and maintained and managed the way it should have been, had it been managed by a company that actually gave a crap about its product instead of buying company jets and basically being greedy bastards and taking the money and running, it could have changed the face of computing as it is now. You know, things could have been different. If they hadn't sat on their asses while sitting on their laurels and let the PCs take over and dominate, we might have some vastly superior hardware to play with now. But there you go. That answers that. How did I feel? Gutted and betrayed. Pissed off. Still do, actually. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I'm recording this on Thursday, so I'm going to stop right now, and maybe I'll have more to talk about tomorrow before I upload this. So yeah, edit.